Welcome to Built with Grit. I'm your host and strategic partner in cost reduction, Luis Fernandez. And today we're joined by Sam Shvarzblat from Cullinan Construction Group. But before we get into that, if you're a fan of inspiring people and informative content, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do. So go ahead, blast that like button. And with that, Sam, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing fantastic, phenomenal.
Phenomenal, fantastic. So, why don't you tell us? Well, okay, I've got a lot of questions. One is like, 2020 has been an interesting year, and the construction industry has faced multiple challenges. And you come out, they're like, I'm phenomenal, I'm fantastic, right? Like, and I've seen some of your posts on different socials, and I'm like, man, this dude is killing it, right? Like, so
Thank you.
I'm curious. I'm interested in your journey. I guess I'd like to start with just kind of where do you think we should start? Should we start at the beginning or start with last year? Like what works?
Whatever works for you. I believe in like just whatever's going on, whatever time of the day it is. It's really not an important factor in what's actually going on. It's
Yeah.
really about living in the moment and trying to make whatever's going on work. So, obviously 2020 was an interesting year, but it doesn't really matter because so we had this to deal with in 2020, and people had to deal with other adversity in 2019, and people are going to deal with adversity when they're in 2025. It's
Mhm.
really a matter of looking at the full picture and saying, hey, where do I fit in this picture? How do I make something for myself out of it? And how do I go about navigating the challenges? So if you look at it from a perspective of you're running that obstacle course, if you're looking ahead, they do this with, let's say, for example, rally racing, where the rally drivers, I don't know if you're familiar with the way they work, but they're going 60 miles an hour through a forest, and the guy's just driving. He has a navigator to his right
Mm.
who's calling out all the turns, and they say left 22 degrees or whatever they're doing, and they're always looking ahead. They're looking at the next move, and that's how they move forward.
Mm.
You really always have to look ahead and say, hey, which way is the market shifting? How am I going to position myself that I'm going to be successful? I can't just stay in the moment. And the beautiful thing about when I started my company was that I started it essentially in 2020. So I had, that's when we really gained traction. I had the opportunity to look at it from a challenging perspective and say, how are we going to build those challenges into our success story? And how are we going to take those, perceived disastrous moments and really create something out of it that builds us to, a stronger company, something more bulletproof, something more, sustainable? Because when everything's going extremely well and smooth and there's nothing to worry about, so pretty much anybody that, can put on their pants in the morning can run a company. But it's really about just like navigating challenges, right? Because everything's great, everything's hunky-dory, beautiful. The second you hit a snag, if you're looking ahead and you say, you know what, we dealt with this, we dealt with that, and you store that away and you create that repertoire in your brain of challenges that it's almost like you level up in skills, and you're able to take those rough moments, and instead of having them as rough moments, they're actually, it's a really horrible word to use just because it's so cringy, but they're teachable moments. They're really moments where you could look at something and you could say, hey, you know what, we ran into this challenge, and now we have a new skill, and now we have a new area. For example, pricing was extremely, extremely difficult in the beginning of 2020 with all the market fluctuation, with the cost of material, labor, regulations, you name it, everything. It was like an avalanche of disaster. But at the same time, it gave me the opportunity to look at our process that I was still essentially creating, and seeing how can we build these challenges in and say, okay, so if the material price is going to go up, we have to figure out how we're going to create a margin for our company at the same time without making the customer lose. Because generally speaking, the easy way out is just to, let's say, as a GC, tack a percentage onto your total cost. So let's say if you're building a house and it costs $100 for the actual material and the labor, as the easy, lazy way out is I'm going to charge you 15% so that I never lose anything on that.
Mm.
But essentially, what you're doing is you're charging the customer for a market shift if the lumber goes up, but there's no actual intrinsic value in that lumber other than that the market changed. We're not providing more service. So people's budgets get blown way out of proportion.
Yeah.
Um, and it also creates this opportunity where the GC has to deal with, let's say, for example, all the funds coming through and allocating them properly. So the GC has to give himself a margin, like a contingency. What we figured out was that we could actually just charge open book. So if you get an invoice and the painter charged you $100, we forward that exact invoice over to the customer and they'll cut a check for the painter. So we have a separate fee that we charge, which is not contingent on any of the material costs. So even if prices go up, our price stays the same.
Oh man, yeah, that's completely different than what anybody has done before.
Yeah,
Oh, I bet you're gonna piss off the competition now.
it's, uh, it's great, honestly. The more that people hear about it and they're like, "Wait, that's how it's supposed to be," and I'm like, and I tell them, "Listen, I agree with you, but go talk to anybody who's been running their business a certain way for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years and try to get them to do it this way, and you're pretty much not going to have any luck with that." Um, so that's something that we were able to, because of these pricing challenges, we figured out how do we isolate what our margin is, what
Yeah.
our overhead is, how much we need to charge a client, and everything else is just a matter of the customer's choice of what they want to spend.
Man, that's awesome. Okay, so now let's back up. You said you started in 2020. So what were you doing prior to that?
So I actually officially started the company in April of 2019.
Okay.
But obviously, till you build a pipeline, till you get out there, till the projects that I won, the first bid that I won was actually a ground up commercial project, 5,000 square feet. And the guy asked me, he said, "Have you ever done anything before?" And I said, "No." So he said, "So why should I hire you? Why should we use you as a company?" I said, "Because we never did anything. Because if you don't understand, right, let's say, for example, Avis versus Hertz in the car rental market. I hope I'm not giving too many examples here, where their slogan was, 'We try harder.' Because we're number two, we try harder.
Yeah.
I have something to prove here." So, he threw me a bone. He gave me two smaller projects, and we worked really well together. And, from that, we built a relationship. And, thank God, it's been phenomenal. And it's a big part of our success, this client of ours. So, I mean, I really wasn't doing anything before, to be honest. I'm 24 years old, actually, believe it or not.
Ah, I was gonna say you look young, but I mean, I didn't want to assume, right? Like,
Yeah. Listen, it's always, it's like people have a problem with the fact that, let's say I'm young and let's say I don't necessarily have as much experience. The difference is that I grew up in this. My family has been involved in developing real estate.
mm,
And I actually used to get my hands dirty as a teenager. When I was like, summer break, I would go out, I would work I have a brother that does commercial doors. I used to go out, I used to be on the job site, I actually got my hands dirty back,
yeah,
got some experience on that side of things. And I really just came out of nowhere and just said, I'm doing this. And I really believe that I could do it. And, if you're confident about what your skill set could be, it doesn't have to be there. You just have to learn it fast enough
yeah,
and try to learn from other people in the industry as you go along, and you can pretty much do whatever you want. That's the beautiful thing about living in the United States, especially in the internet age. So if you have a question about something, believe it or not, you can go on YouTube and you can pretty much learn anything that you need to know.
mm.
Not that I'm saying that I get my knowledge from YouTube, because that
That's good. Well,
but there's actually,
I,
go
I
ahead.
I think it takes somebody, oftentimes it has to be somebody new to an industry many times to change it, you know. Like you just did. I mean, that is a huge difference to typical operating models when it comes to and what kind of, and you said you're building commercial buildings, right?
So we do pretty much everything. So the way I break it down, and this took a long time to figure out too, like what do we do, what do we not do? Because in the beginning, you're just grabbing every job that you can, so
Oh yeah.
just so that you can build your company. But really, what we focus on is so it's broken down. Let's say it's tranched from commercial and residential, right? Generally speaking, we have commercial and residential. On the commercial side, we have pretty much anything commercial. So if that's a renovation, a fit out, ground up, whatever it might be, we do that. On the residential side, we stick to significant additions. So that would be, let's say, adding, let's say, approximately 100% of the structure as an additional structure. I mean, say we'll double a house. That's got to be a certain amount of work that we're coming in for,
Sure.
or we'll do ground up. Now, in those two categories, there's also a separate category which we have, which is design built, which applies to either commercial or residential, where we actually almost every single one of our projects has turned out this way, where we've I've never gotten a set of plans and put in permits and built it. That's not how we evolved. We pretty much do, and I've actually come up with a way to monetize that now, which is always the hard part when you're a GC, because you're offering all this value up front when you're like, okay, let me help you with the design, and how do you monetize that? So we've come up with a way to monetize that as well. But we have a category of cool design build where we have, somebody's going to look at a piece of land and they want to know, what do I got to do here? I've got to bring sewer. Do I have to bring water? Do I have to bring power? What's it going to take for me to even close on this land, for me to even go in and put a building up here? Is my profit margin going to be good on that? So you have to understand, all the characteristics of the actual project, and then going out there and designing it with the budget in mind is super, super helpful. Because if you came to me as a builder and you said, here's a set of plans, I'm going to go put that into the building department, and the building department might send it back and they might say that it needed certain structural changes, and you're going to go tell the architect. And by the time you get back to the builder, your price just went up $10,000 because you had to add a beam here, add a beam there.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily know how to navigate, with the architect. You don't even know if you're using the right architect because you just called your buddy who used this architect before you, and you guys don't necessarily even get along. And it's not necessarily somebody that you want to work with, as opposed to, starting out where we say, look, this is our vision. And I say, okay, I'm going to put it together a team for you. We're going to use this architect. We're going to use this engineer. We're going to use this designer. And we're going to stick to a certain budget. So we're able to structurally and aesthetically design something that's within a budget and stick to that, because as we're going through the design process, I already know how much things are going to cost.
Yeah.
And when we go back to the township and we put in, or the city, and we put in the paperwork and they say, hey, you need to change X, Y, and Z, as a builder, I can go back to them and I could say, look, we're not going to do that. That's way too expensive. What we're going to do is we're going to do something else, which is going to accomplish what you need. So there's ways to save money before you start, as opposed to value engineering, which time is money. Material prices went up. I just had a post on LinkedIn yesterday where I was talking about 3 months that we waited on a change order. Lumber went up $10,000.
Oh, in
But
3 months.
that's part of it. Yep. Yeah, they signed. They agreed to the change order in January. They didn't fund it till March, and that's what happens because time is really money in today's market. So being able to get a grip on all that and streamline the process for the client, it actually saves the money, even though they're paying us to coordinate it, because we're able to navigate and go through all those hoops for them.
Yeah.
And it's something that we do every day. So that's something that another area where we're really redefining, the idea of what a GC is.
Yeah. For sure. So, what kind of is it? Just been like office buildings, or has it been manufacturers, or like what kind of commercial? Also, where are you? Where are you operating at?
So I'm based out of Lakewood, New Jersey,
Okay.
but we operate pretty much the entire state of New Jersey and some of Eastern Pennsylvania. So we'll go out pretty much. That's where we're dealing with stuff now. But we've done not everything, but we've done pretty much every kind of project you could imagine. So from taking a dingy strip mall and giving it a nice facade and putting in canopies and lighting and refacing it, to gutting 8,500 square feet and replacing all the roof joists and building up a new facade from the exterior to ground up, which is
I
like
was gonna
putting
say,
up.
if you're doing 8,500 square feet, all the like what you just described, why not build new? Like, is it not? Is it just so because I can use the same prints, or how does that work?
So it's actually more cost effective this way. This was one of our design build projects as well, where we actually brought in the engineer and the architect. It was an existing building. It was pretty much sitting abandoned, so it was useless to the owner, but they wanted to generate, they wanted to create some more retail space so they could generate some revenue. And the building itself is in pretty solid condition. It's a steel frame building. So initially when we went in, all we were going to do was take off the roof and build up the front and put in a new storefront glass. But once we actually went in and demoed, we realized that all the joists were rotten. Everything was rotten on the inside.
Hmm.
So technically speaking, it probably was close to the same amount to do what we're doing. But at the same time, we don't have to go through any major zoning issues because we're keeping it the exact same footprint. We don't have to deal with zoning. Um, there's a lot of things that we don't have to go through. We don't have to go through engineering. It's pretty much still classified as a restoration, which saves a ton of time as well as money, because you need, time is money again, and
Yeah.
professionals need to hire for such a project. really changes everything. So having it streamlined, we actually picked an architect who is also certified as a civil engineer, structural engineer. So he was able to do the entire project for us on our budget and design it exactly how we had in mind. And that's how we were able to get in there really quickly, get it approved super fast because we weren't changing anything,
Mhm.
essentially.
Yeah, this is it's an interesting principle where, as a bill or as a investor, if I want to, do a project, it sounds like I can even come to you, like maybe even before I buy the land, right? Like, do you work that soon with somebody?
Absolutely. That's we've done that. We're working on a project now, which we're hoping to break ground in July. We're just waiting for the final approvals to come through. It's a 15,000 square foot mixed use retail and office space that we actually went through all those things before the client closed. You nailed it. That's exactly like where we come in. The earlier we come in, the easier it is for you to save money and streamline the process, because instead of, we're kind of like a catch-all where you don't have to go and shop around and try to figure out who you're going to use before you even get to the builder. And now we're able to design that building with the budget as well as all the other needs that the client has in mind, so that when we're ready to go and we want to put a shovel in the ground, everybody's, in the same headspace, everybody's on the same page as far as what we're doing, and we're able to go there and knock it out and really be super clear. There's no scope that we didn't understand beforehand where we looked at a set of plans and said, hey, what's included? Because we actually designed the building. We actually
Yeah.
went through it. We know exactly what we need to do. We're not going to miss out any details because we're the ones who put those details there in the first place.
Oh, that's awesome. This is a really great model. I, uh, I do some investing on the side, um, and things have just gotten very expensive. I assume that commercial real estate is going to go through an awakening here soon, and not a good one. Um, with so many folks going to work from home or whatever, we're gonna have to adapt in our commercial real estate space and find new ways to use that space. um, but where I have invested in is in like multifamily, and I actually talked to a guy he's got, oh, I want to say it's over, probably by this point 11,000 units, um, here in Arizona. And he's, he basically just follows the pricing, and when the cap rates get too low, he builds. And I was driving by a neighborhood and I saw one of his projects that just started going up, and I was like, okay, so he's seeing the same thing I am, where the cap rates are getting pretty compressed, and he's like, screw it, I'm going to build it, from the ground up myself. Um,
Right.
but one of the challenges with that is like finding the land, and then planning like this whole process of revenue generation and how that's going to happen. So I think it's really interesting that you would come in so early on that I could say, okay, I think there's a need in this neighborhood, and here's a plot of land. Let's work together and figure out, what is this neighborhood going to look like, and all that. Is that,
Right.
did I get it right?
Yeah, and to add even more to what you're saying is, if you understand the local municipality and you've done your research, so we can go and we could talk to the township, we could sniff around, we could look at what's happened in the past in that specific neighborhood. For example, if we want to build something and technically speaking, the square footage requires X amount of parking spaces. Let's say you need 100 parking spaces, right? So it's a simple process to get a variance to change it if you're only going to put 98 parking spaces or 97 parking spaces. But if it's a specific area where you have a lot of traffic coming through and they've had issues in the past with congestion, you might want to shrink the footprint of your building just to accommodate those parking spaces so that you save yourself 6 months in the planning board.
Mm.
And that those 6 months is crucial because once you close on your property,
You're paying
you
for it.
want you're paying for it. And not only are you paying for it, if you're not making money, you're losing money, right? Every second that you're not generating revenue out of that piece of land. So we just say, aside from the fact that we saved a headache there, we also shaved off 6 months where you're able to look now at this project and you're able to say, okay, I'm generating. So now it's actually something that's more worthwhile to invest in, as opposed to having it sit for that long and having it bleed your pockets dry.
So how long does it take you for a 15,000 square foot location, bare dirt, to a functional tenants inside building?
So generally, something like that would be 6 months,
Okay.
depending on how detailed it was. So if it was built to suit, it might take a little bit longer. If it's vanilla shell, then it's going to be a lot quicker as far as what we're doing. Also depends on which systems are being installed. If it's something that has an elevator, specifically in my area, the elevators have a 1 year lead time. The second you
One
put a shovel
year
in the ground, yep,
for an elevator?
yep.
Okay.
So
Wow.
it's interesting, and you have to know that as a builder, you have to know your market. So as soon as you apply for permits, you got to order the elevator, and that's usually one of the last things that goes in before CO. That's one of the final things that gets installed.
Wow.
Installed. So obviously you're going to put the rails in, and you're going to have obviously whatever you can built out for the elevator. But yeah, most of the manufacturers here have a 1 year lead time. So just knowing that alone is a crucial piece of
It's a
information that
freaking
if
metal
you don't know,
box.
yeah, but it's crazy. Every single industry just takes as much time as they want now, honestly. And there's so much construction going on in our area, my area specifically, that they can't work fast enough to get the jobs done that need to be done.
I
It's
used to work for John Deere, and I went and visited the combine factory. And we were pumping out a combine every, I want to say it was every 5 or 7 minutes. There was a new one coming off the tail end of the assembly line, and
it's
that thing is
crazy.
the size of a house. And it's a
Right.
machine that moves the size of a house. And every 7 minutes they were pumping one out. So I guess, when you say a year for an elevator, that's where I'm I struggle. I mean, I guess it's just the amount of orders in front of it.
It's also a matters the thing that matters as well is that it's something that requires skilled labor, and it's never the same twice in a row. So obviously every single elevator has custom configurations, and together with the fact that most of the elevator guys are union guys, you have a recipe for things
So
taking
what you're
longer
saying
than you
is
think.
I need to find a way of manufacturing elevators in an assembly line style that does not have to be that custom for every single location. If I figure that out, I'm going to own this industry. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I mean, at this you can, yeah. I mean, you can go down a list of industries where if you figured it out, um, you know what I'm saying? It's I'm sure someone will do something about it, and I'm sure the lead times will shrink, but even due to COVID, like it's just people don't work as hard.
Hmm. Yeah. So that's interesting. Now, how did you find the folks that you're gonna hire to bring in to do this organization? I mean, did you do like an interview process, or so you decide I'm gonna be I'm gonna general contractor, right? So I'm gonna bring all of these folks to do this construction. How did you pick who those people were?
So a lot of trial and error, honestly. In the beginning, you figure out who you want, who you want to use. Who's going to be your people, who you're going to call, who's going to be there for you, who's going to come in at the price you need, and then how well do you guys work together? And when they say they're going to be done at a certain point in time, is the job done satisfactorily? Satisfactorily, if that's a word. I'm sure it
I think
is.
it works. I know what it means. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like it's kind of like I always like to boil things down to super simple black and white. Like
Yeah.
if you were going to if you moved to a new neighborhood and you wanted to pick a dry cleaners, so you try one. If you were happy with them, then you stick with them. If you're not, then you're gonna go somewhere else until you find that one dry cleaner who's gonna, every time you walk in, they're gonna be like, hey, what's going on? What, like till you get to that point, it takes time, and especially being new in the industry and being young, people don't really respect you.
Hmm.
They kind of think that they're there to tell you how to do your job. They've been working in the fields for 20 years, and this is not how you do things. But I have a vision for what I want to do, and if you don't like it, then you can get the hell off my job site, because this is the way I run things. I run things a certain way, and my clients are happy about it, and I'm happy about it. And even though the guys are used to doing things a certain way, it's just if I hire you to do the job, you're going to do it the way I ask you to. Otherwise, you're not going to do it at all.
Right.
And you got to run a tight ship, because ultimately the buck stops at you, not the boss. There's no one else I'm responsible for everything. So that means that, as much as possible, I have to look out at these companies, these subcontractors, and these laborers, and I have to say, hey, look, these guys are representative of me, of my brand, of what we do. And if they don't come through and do what they're supposed to do, they don't care. I'm saying that doesn't hurt them, that hurts me. So it's something that takes a lot of, we're still working on, getting everything set up properly and using the right people. But, it's a process, and it's something that evolves over time. And when they make a mistake, you have to cover for it. It's just how it is.
Right. So how did you, I mean, you told us about, winning that first bid where the guy said, why should I go for you? So how did you even like identify these potential clients? What did you do when you first kicked off? I'm going to find some clients and here's where they are, where they're going to be.
So I started by talking to my neighbors. I had just moved into a new neighborhood, and I just told everybody, I introduced myself and said, hey, I'm a contractor, and this is
Okay.
what I do. And then one day, out of the blue, one of my new neighbors just sent me a message. He was like, hey, call this guy. So I call him up, and I said, hey, you're looking for a contractor? He said, yeah. I said, okay, here's my email. Send me the plans. And it went from there. And I opened the email after I hung up with him, and I was like, holy cow, what do I do here? How do I make this work? And then I stopped and I said, you know what? I'm going to make this is guys have been killing to get jobs like this, and they've been in the industry for 5 years.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to let this one fall through the cracks. I'm going to do anything I can to win the bid. I signed the contract with him. There were 3 other big GCs that were fighting for the bid. I signed the contract with him before he gave me a deposit. And I just, the first thing I did is I was like, I just need you to sign a contract with me that you're going to use us. We'll figure out the rest later. We'll figure out pricing later, but I'll come in at the price you want, because, and he was willing to accommodate that. And, obviously there was, he was willing to, if you want to say, so to speak, look past the flaw of being new in the industry. But he's only gained from it because we've just been there for him from the beginning. And now, as one of our clients and one of our primary clients, and we do multiple projects with them, we have their back 100%. So if he needs a coffee from the gas station, I'll pick it up for him too. Whatever he needs, I'm his guy. You always want to be.
Yeah, man. I
You,
love it.
you always want to be people's person. You know what I mean? You want to be somebody's guy, right? Everybody says, "Oh, I have a guy," right? Somebody gets into a fender bender, they're like, "Oh, I have a guy down the block. He fixes it, no problem." They don't even think twice. They don't look at the competition because they have a guy.
Yeah. Right.
And as long as you keep delivering, and as long as you're their guy, then you kind of have a made in the shade. It's kind of ready to, if as long as you keep proving yourself and keep going out there, and then you already have yourself a super happy client. You have a portfolio that you built up, and even if you didn't make the margins that you wanted to make in the beginning, I could turn around and look at 5 projects that we've done and say we've done X, Y, and Z. Like, challenge me. I want to try something new. Like, I'll take any project on at this point, and I'm 100% confident in our capabilities.
I will take a smaller margin over with a larger top line every single time. Right? Like you can either make 30% on X, or you can make 10% on 20X. What give me the 10%, man. I'll write checks to whoever it is. If you're gonna 20X my income, no problem, right? Like I'll take a
Exactly.
smaller percentage every time.
Yeah.
Do that happily. I really like that you say, be the guy. And it's really interesting. I just had a conversation like this with a potential client of mine. Last week I was out there, and I'm talking to this person. We do cost reduction, and we're consulting and the like. And I'm like, well, yeah, we've got particular categories that we're experts at, but if you want to pull up your P&L, I'll look at everything and see where else there may be opportunities. And one of the things is like this cleaning service that they got, and it was like, I don't know anything about cleaners, but I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna go do some research, and I'm gonna find the right one, and I'm gonna come back to you. I was
Amen.
like, you don't know anything about it? Like, nope, but I'm going to make these phone calls and we'll figure it out, and yeah, so I'm still trying to figure it out, calling on people and figuring out, going to similar industries that do the stuff. Like, how do you guys do this? What's the normal rate? What should it be? And
Right.
what are some things we could do? Like, that's the same kind of principle, right? Like, and if she would have said, yeah, oh man, I'm so thirsty. Like, what can I get you?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think also an important thing that people fail to realize is important. I mean, they talk about it you kind of have two camps when it comes to what I'm going to talk about now, but I think it's something that people don't really fully process properly is branding. So you have the guys who just say, "Oh, I don't need logos, I don't need fancy stationery, I don't need advertisements." And then you have people who are like, "Oh, I'm going to put in $10,000 towards a website. I'm going to put in money towards advertising. I'm going to put in money towards, um, X, Y, and Z just to get my name out there." So I actually took kind of a hybrid approach where we've done not guerrilla marketing, but where we kind of get our name out there without spending a lot of money. So we invest in signage on all our projects. Social media is free.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 100% legitimately free. So anybody who's not utilizing that is kind of just losing money, honestly.
Right.
And then just like the idea of like we have swag, we have merch. I ordered 200 baseball hats with our logo on it, and I'm down to two left in the box. I give it to every single person that shows up on the job site. I have 200 people walking around my town right now with my logo.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, what's that?
So
Yeah. That's that.
exactly.
Yeah. They're wearing it. Well, what's that?
And what it costs to get 200 caps, less than an advertisement on a billboard.
Mm. Right. And yours is mobile.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ah, I like
Exactly.
it. I dig it. Dig it. No, that's cool. And so how are you generating kind of leads regularly now?
So, well, what I'm trying to do is streamline from the point of starting a project to completing it. I'm trying to get that off to our project managers where I don't have to be as involved. So I can go out there and I can run my mouth, and I like to talk. And, that's where I'm in my happy space where I could talk about what I love and I could go out and meet people. I really just try to network. And even if you don't need a builder, if you if I come across to you as super impressive, you're going to go tell your buddy about it. Next time someone's talking around the fireplace and they're like, "Hey, I need a builder," my name's gonna come right to the tip of your tongue, right? So
Right.
through networking, I post a ton of pictures on social media, and I try to just my sales pitch is that I don't sell, and I tell it to people. The first thing I say if somebody's looking for a builder is, I'll say, "Hey, look, I'm not here to sell you. If you don't want to use me as a builder, that's fine. I'm just here to provide value. So if you have any questions, you need a painter, you need a plumber, you need a designer, just shoot me a message and I'll shoot somebody over to you for free. It doesn't matter to me
Right.
because at the end of the day, you're just adding value costs nothing.
Right.
So giving that value and getting your name out there, and really just when you work hard on something and you complete a project successfully, that itself is actual advertisement. So people drive by and they see this project and they're like, "Wow, who did that?"
Right.
And doing that over and over again and really just popping up all over the place. I mean, like a year ago we had no presence, and now you drive, there's many places where you could drive now and our sign is proudly up there, and you drive by and it's us. So all of a sudden, who's this new company that just came up out of nowhere and we're branded to the teeth? So I started, when we submit our paperwork into the township, we have our logo in big bold color at the top. I'm actually ordering paper clips for that paperwork which have our logo on it. um, you know, just to get into people's psyche, right? Where they don't even realize that you're there.
Mm. Yeah.
And and that's what really branding is all about. Because if you see the Target icon, let's say for the Target brand, right? Target stores, right? You don't
Yep.
need to see the word Target next to it.
Right.
And ironically, a Target is not even something that should be associated with a grocery store or a supermarket
Right.
or whatever you want to call it. So I mean that's what they've done, and that's the phenomenal thing about branding is that you're able to really hack people's psyche and really get in there and just plant a seed, and it's there forever. So I have a lot of friends that are, all my friends are in their 20s. Nobody's building a house yet, but everybody sees my social media. So I'm planning for 5 years or 10 years down the run when they actually saved up enough money to build something, they're gonna call me because
Yep.
they know me for 10 years and they saw all my work.
Right. Yeah, I think it's also kind of ingenious that you're doing it for all your approvals, your township approvals, and something that kind of occurred to me while you were describing is that the people that are going to give you the okay, if they're regularly giving that brand is always going to be good, you actually are probably going to get away with more stuff, right? Because eventually they're like, oh, this is Cullinan. Yeah. Their stuff is always good, right? Like, is that, yeah, sure. That's cool. Send it, stamp it,
Yep.
go. You're going to get through faster.
Yeah. And the other like really, really awesome part about it is that we actually come across, we're just a piece of paper sitting in a stack of hundreds of pieces of paper. What we come across as is an industry leader, somebody who's been around for years, who's a professional organization. So when they see that, they know that if they don't respond, because now all the townships and cities, they're just like, hey, we're 2 weeks out, we're a month out. They used to follow certain timelines. So we actually timestamp the cover sheet with our logo on it. So they see the big logo at the top, all the information's on there. Anybody you need to contact for any questions, email addresses, phone numbers, block, etc. And then it's timestamped. So they know, they don't know that we're not necessarily the largest company out there. But if you're dealing with a big company, let's say like Turner Construction Company, that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna come walking, strutting into the office like, this is our stuff, approve it now. So if you just mimic the big guys, then they treat you like the big guys because they don't know that you're not a big guy. And what
Right.
happens is turn things around faster, clients are happier, people, see that you're getting results. And that's an incredible competitive advantage. Aside from the fact that the information is actually there in front of them to see, so they can actually contact you if they have any questions, as opposed to looking through a jacket, you know, looking through, I actually have one right here. I should have one, whatever. The point is, it's like this little tiny form, and all that information is hand scribbled, or you got a nice big beautiful piece of paper that has all that information on it as well.
Yeah. No, that's it's the detail work, that you are applying all the way through the organization, and every step and facet, from the client saying, I have an idea, to you handing over a key to a building. It sounds like you are meticulous about every one of those little steps, all the way down.
That's what I try to do. That's what the goal is, you know, and we're trying. Every day we learn something new, and we learn a new trick, and we put it in our playbook. That's something that I always keep my eyes out for how other people do things and how not to do things. Like when I started, my email address was sam@cullinanconstruction.com. And I realized that I wasn't getting responses when I sent out an email, let's say, to the township, because it's really hard to spell that.
Mm.
It's just a long email address. So I actually, bought a new domain, and now we're just ccmgrp.com. So it's super, super simple. I spent a long time trying to figure out what would sound professional, you know, and how we could shorten it down to as small as possible, and how we could get that email address. And, for $12 a year,
Yeah.
it's worth it.
Yeah. So when you started, was it just you, or okay. And how many folks do you have now?
So now we don't even have that many right now. We have two project managers, and we have girl in the office, and we have me. But we're looking to expand and bring on more people slowly. I'd rather be more involved and be frazzled, and by the end of the day, completely wiped out. But I know that everything was done the way I wanted to, because when you start something, you really have to have your fingerprints all over it. At a certain point, you could, kind of lean back and say, "Hey, all right, I'll take my foot off the gas, let somebody else drive the car." But in the beginning, you really have to be there for every single client, because you have to prove, and you have to show people, that you're worth something, that you're bringing a certain value, and that means being on top of every single stupid detail, because the stupid details are the ones that end up causing the most problems.
Absolutely. Yep. I have seen in machines where, we worked on a machine for a week trying to figure out what was going on, and there was an additional fuse put in where it shouldn't have
Yeah, makes
been.
sense.
You 400 hours of labor into this thing, and it was like somebody just pulled out a fuse and bam, everything works. You know,
Yeah,
so that level of like getting into the minutia, and being in every step. The other thing is that, um I'm with you, on hiring slow, and firing slow as well, or right, like, I you know I know a lot of folks want to fire fast or whatever, but there's a few things that if somebody does, like, you're out that day, right? Like, if you're unsafe, you almost get somebody killed, or you're stealing, or, sexual harassment, whatever, bye today, but, if you're kind of missing stuff, like, what am I doing wrong as a leader? How am I not providing you the information that you need? Or maybe I'm just putting you in the wrong spot. Maybe I can put you somewhere else and you're going to shine and succeed. And, because it's hard to, uproot somebody. Either it's hard to hire and it's hard to fire, in both cases. It's not a decision taken lightly. So I think you've certainly got the right approach for what it's worth. Like, this random ass dude giving you like the approval thumbs up, dude.
No, I appreciate it. Awesome. Seriously. Thank you. But yeah, and I would just add to that I like to hire new people who weren't in the industry beforehand. And what I'll do is I'll start with a really low salary, not for long. But what that does is that weeds out a lot of people, because the people who are just coming to you and they want to make money don't give a darn about construction. People who want to build a future in a company, they'll say, hey, look, I'll take the pay cut for the first 6 months, and I'll be straight up that you're going to get a fat bonus after 6 months. It's just a trial period. But if you could hold yourself off and take that less of a paycheck and prove yourself, that means that you're in it for more than just the money, because money alone can't be a factor in hiring somebody. If they can't take a pay cut to come work for you, then they can go work somewhere else, in my opinion. Obviously I treat everybody, I try to treat them as I would treat myself, how I want to enjoy life. So, like, I'm very, very, a big thing by me is that everybody who works for me has set hours, meaning not necessarily when the clock starts, but when the clock ends. After 6 p.m., weekends, I don't bother you. I provide a separate cell phone, iPad. Everything is completely separate from their personal life, so that you never have to mesh the two together.
Yeah.
I don't need to call you when you're at a Sunday afternoon barbecue yelling at you to go somewhere. I'm not your freaking wife. I'm not your grandfather. I'm not your mother. I'm not your father. I'm not your freaking, I'm your employer. I'm giving you that opportunity to further your own career. I'm not there to make you lose out on personal life. Personal life is super important. That's how you stay focused. You don't get burnt out that way.
Right.
You need time off. As long as it doesn't interfere with the schedule, I don't care.
Right.
As long as you're getting the job done.
Yep.
And that's really super, it's important. If you don't have that attitude, then the people who are working for you are just what? They're robots who just answer your commands. I want to be able to get pushback and say, hey, don't bother me, it's Sunday, unless it's really important.
Yep. No, we hire people for their creativity. Then we've got to allow them to be creative, right? Like, you can't say, you could hire the best possible, artist in the world, and then give them 3 colors and that of a, of watercolor paint when they're an oil painter, or they're, whatever. You're giving them a tool that they don't use, that they're not creative with, to do it on a canvas that they're not good at. And then you criticize the painting that they've created for you. Like, well, that's your fault. That's not them. That you're not letting them do what it is that they do and be creative in the way that they are, I have a saying when, as a boss, and guys would be like, can I leave early, or can I take off work? I'm like, I don't know, man. Your schedule. You're a grown ass man. Like, can you, like, are you good? Are you good to leave early? Like, well, yeah, I think so. That's what, then okay, bye.
100%.
That was the joke. That you're a grown ass man. Like, you don't need to come and ask me for stuff, man. I'm not your daddy.
Exactly.
What was that?
I might use that now. I might just steal that, if you don't mind.
Steal it. Go for it. Yeah. Dude, yep. That's
steal it if I ask first.
Yeah. I learned that lesson. Actually, I was in Iraq, and I was working for a major, and we were in charge of keeping this highway secure. And it's like the main highway that would go from Kuwait to Baghdad. And he'd give me a task, and I wanted to be the best worker, right? So he'd give me a task, and I'd work on it and be like, okay, sir, that's done, what's next? And he'd give me something, and I'd work on it and be like, okay, sir, it's done, what's next? And he'd give me a task, and I'd work on it. And we were doing that. And finally, one day, he just looked over his computer. He said, Lewis, you're a captain in the United States Army. You have access to the calendar. You figure out what's next. I was like, that's a good point. I can figure out what's next. Like I need to stop asking and just, be a grown ass man and figure out what it is I need to do. And
Right.
that's when we really started, things started actually happening, and that creativity and the ability to execute on stuff. And that was actually much more fulfilling for me. I like to have a lot of rope and the freedom to make decisions. So good on you,
Yeah.
man.
I mean, that's it's just fascinating. Like, I actually, first of all, thank you for serving. I don't think I mentioned that.
Thank
Um,
you for your support.
and it's actually really fascinating that the military and creates that structure for a lot of people where they can go out there and they're able to succeed in life further on because they have certain work ethic that other people wouldn't necessarily have. I have a concrete contractor, um, and concrete/site work, and both the dudes that run the company, one of them was in the Israeli military, and the other dude was in he was I believe he was in the Rangers. He was a diesel mechanic, and he
Okay.
does site work. And he's like an operator. He just runs machines and digs stuff all day. And if they say they're going to be there at 7 a.m. and it's going to take them a week to get the job done, I don't have to say anything. They'll get it done. And there's a certain attitude of like, they've been through crazier stuff. It's not like like, oh, you're gonna ruin my day because your schedule's off a little bit. That ain't ruining my day. How about try the stuff that we went through when we were dealing with X, Y, and Z. And that's kind of it's fascinating that you're able to take like it builds a certain amount of like adversity really builds character, and every single flavor of adversity, whatever it might be. And I think that circles back to kind of what 2019 2020 was. It was really about either step up or just give up. Like there's no middle ground. It's really about seeing the challenges and looking at them and saying, okay, I can handle this. If I'm here and I'm looking at this, I can figure it out. I think that's a fascinating thing about people with a military background, is that they can look at a full picture and they can say, okay, this is an obstacle. um, I've been trained to overcome that obstacle and use that as a stepping stone to further whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks, you watch a lot of military movies, and it's like the drill sergeant and all of this, and you're told exactly what to do, and that's the impression. And the reality is, the military very much operates on an open hand leadership style, because you cannot micromanage in a battlefield. You simply can't, right? So you sit. What happens if I'm going to create a defensive position? I go to a soldier and I say, actually, I go to as an officer, you got a larger group, right? So I'm like, okay, you've got security from this position to this position. That's your job. And then that guy goes and he tells his guys the same thing, and it goes all the way down to the lowest dude. And he's got and you point him in the ground, you lay down next to him, you're like, from that tree to that tree is your responsibility. And the dude next to him has overlap, right? But and then you walk away. So here's this 18-year-old kid who knows, between that tree and that tree, if it comes in here, it dies, right? And I have to have like some modicum of thought process, because if it's a friendly or if it's enemy or whatever. But he's left alone. Like no one is standing there saying, shoot at that one and shoot at that one, or like that's it. He's got his area of responsibility. So it's very much that same open hand deal. And so when you do, yeah, you're right. When you get somebody who's in the military and you're giving them, that's all they need. They need an intent. What's your intent? What do you want this project to look like when it's over? So this is like the military orders style. Commander's intent and ed state. What are my left and right limits? And what are the key points in the timeline? And what are the people next to me doing, just so that I don't bump into them? And after that, you're on your own, right? Like what needs done. Figure it out.
Exactly, and that's really how I'm trying to set my company up. Honestly, that's really because at the end of the day, the whoever's at the top really just has to make sure that everything's running smoothly. But when it filters down through the chain of command, every single base has to be covered. How you cover that base, as long as it's not offensive or inappropriate or not being done properly, the base is covered. So just like there's that saying that you got to be able to do 20% of the work that's going to give you 80% of the results.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's I really firmly believe in that, and really just maintaining a certain level of achievement. if that's the right way to say it.
And whatever the culture is going to be, you're going to set it. Right. So when you do your spot check and you go to a site, right, and you look at something and you run your hand against a column, you're like, is that bumpy to you? Right. Like, come on, man. You're like, that's important. It needs to be smooth, right? And the guy's like, fine, right? You know what's going to happen on the next column? It's going to be smooth. You only need to do that the one time, right? Like from then on, he's going to be running his hand down, be like, yeah, that's good. Or if you get to a site and it's near the end of the day and you look around and then you grab a broom and you start sweeping, guess what's going to happen within 15 seconds? Be 15 other brooms going and everybody's sweeping, right? Because like, oh, if the guy in charge is, I'm not gonna have the CEO sweeping my area. He's like, oh, he was over there. My stuff is clean over here. Like.
Absolutely, that's so true. It's such a good point. It's like and I can pull up at a job site. I don't even have to get out of my car, and I know who to yell at. Not obviously not yell at, but like I'll pull up and I'll be like, I'll be looking around and I'm like, what's that over there?
Yeah.
What's that over there? What's that over there? What's that over there? Next time, don't do it. And I really, part of what I do is I like to show up. I don't have a schedule when it comes to checking up on sites. Because if you get predictive, then people know he's coming now.
All right.
I could show up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I could be there at 3 in the afternoon. I could be there on a Tuesday, a Friday. I'm going to be there whenever I need to be there because it's my company.
Yep. I
never want to lose that edge. So I always want to be able to go out and touch base with every single one of my projects at least once a week. Mm-hmm. That's like, because if something happens within a week, if you catch it within the week, it's always rectifiable. But if you wait 2-3 weeks and they already did the work and it's already way past the point where you're going to have to go back and change it. So now you have to go and create a whole PR story to the client about why it didn't work out the way you wanted it to, when you should have just gotten off your chair, gotten in your car, drove down to the job site, looked at it before everything, got sideways the way it did. Mm-hmm. Right? Because if you have one beam out of alignment, not a big deal to knock it back in place. But now when you have sheetrock on and it's painted, you're looking at a whole different animal.
Yeah, yeah. When you show up at 8, bring some donuts with you. They'll be excited to see you every time.
Yeah, I know. I always think about that, but I happen to think that bringing donuts, part of I don't believe in that because, the same reason a lot of the guys that are working on the job site speak Spanish, I speak to them in English. I try to create a certain level of respect between the two of us where there's a certain amount of understanding where I'm in charge and I'm here and you're here and you better understand that. If not, you can walk away because, if I bring donuts, I'm their buddy. If I speak to them in Spanish, then I'm their buddy. I'm not their buddy. I hired them to do a job. We're all men. Do your job professionally and we can all understand things and we could crack a good joke here and there. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But really just I'm, laser focused on that, and I'll come for 5 minutes and I'll look around and I'll write down a list of things that I don't like and I'll leave. I don't even finish conversations, because I got to be on to the next place. I got to keep going. I got to keep moving. And it's something that, it creates a certain, especially, being 24, almost 25 years old, an industry where guys are double my age, if not, past that, and they've been doing it for so long. If you give them any room to assume that they're, more responsible than you are, then everything runs amok. Everything goes sideways and that's something that I deal with as a unique challenge. Because people see it and they're like, oh, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And the truth is I might not, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I'm writing the check. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I always like to refer to it as this is my country. I'm the president. My project manager is the lieutenant. And this is how I run my country. If you don't like it, get citizenship elsewhere. And what that does is the client actually respects me and respects the work that we're doing because I'm able to say, hey, I run a tight ship. So you're never going to have a point where you're like, this is not what I wanted because I run such a tight ship. And sometimes, I'm really not hard on anybody, but I'm very straight up.
Yeah.
I'll say right away because if I'm not, I get walked all over. That's how it works. Oh no, boss, I'm sorry. I was supposed to come yesterday. Then my kid's cat toenail, I don't know, just some stupid excuse. Yeah. And then the whole project gets thrown off by a week where I could just turn back to them and say, look, we agreed to doing this project. We agreed to a timeline. We agreed to a price, and you're going to stick to all three or I'm going to call someone else.
Right.
And I'd rather take money out of my own pocket, hire a new subcontractor who's charging maybe a little bit more, but they're going to get the job done. And it sends a message very loud and very clear to the
Sure.
other people that are working on the job. Because when you have your own employees and your own laborers, you're able to control them a lot better than a subcontractor. So the only way to keep a subcontractor in line is for him to know that this could be his last, his last job with me. He's always got to know that on the back of his head.
Mm. Well, I mean, that's the same pressure you're under too.
Oh, of course,
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
But
The guy who's paying you is thinking the same thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something that people, everyone's so busy trying to be nice.
Mm.
But what they end up doing is they end up being nice to the wrong people. Who are you being nice to? You're going to be nice to the subcontractor and let him play his shenanigans, or what about your client? What about your client? How about be tough to the subcontractor so you can be nice to your client? And there's a certain really hard concept to wrap your head around, because sometimes you're not the best. You're not like the most exciting person to be in the room with, but you have a point to bring across, and it's something that you got to deal with. And at the end, you always got to slap them on the back and tell them, hey, look, it's all good, don't worry about it, we'll fix it up, it'll be good for next time. And you always have to give them that positive re-encouragement and
Mm.
positive encouragement as well. It's not about just tearing people down, it's about building them up constructively.
Yeah.
But it's if I walk, for example, I walked in on we were doing a flooring job. There were these engineered hardwood 8-inch planks, $18 a square foot, hardwood flooring.
Mm.
And the way the guy was laying it, he wasn't staggering the joints. It was in a hallway, and he was just lining up the pieces. And I walked in and I said to him, he was already on his way to finish the room. And I opened the door and I looked down and I said, buddy, that looks like what? I said, buddy, that looks like garbage. And he said to me, no, it's good. I said, no, it's not. I said, come here. I brought him out and I said, look at this. I said, would you want this in your house? Is this, because this is what I have to deal with for the client. This is what they want in their house. He said, okay, I'll change it. And then when it was done at the end of the day, I went back and I gave him a very nice compliment. I said, look how beautiful this is. Isn't this so much better?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, you're right. I should have done that. Without tearing him down, I was able to get what I needed done instead of getting walked all over and having an unhappy client.
Right.
And there's just one example out of 800 examples that happen on a daily basis.
Sure. Yeah. So if somebody is in that, would you say East Pennsylvania and the state of New Jersey, and they're thinking about doing a project or whatever, where do they find you? Like, is it the website? Is it some sort of social site that you're most on? How does someone get in touch with you if you're thinking about doing a project?
So they can either reach out to me through Instagram, LinkedIn, BizFluence, of course. I'm a big fan of BizFluence.
Yeah.
I have a website. You can just Google Cullinan Construction, Lakewood, New Jersey. And there's people know how to reach me. I get sales calls all day, so I'm sure if you wanted to hire me, I don't know where they got my information from, but we're out there.
Awesome. And any parting words that you want to give out there to folks listening in?
Yeah, I would say just whatever you're doing, if you should never make a decision out of pressure. Meaning to say, never do something impulsively. If it's going to be who you hire as a general contractor or where you buy your next mattress or whatever it might be, always try to boil everything down to a simple pros and cons list. Try to create as much black and white in your life as possible. The less gray area you have, even if it takes a minute to stop, pause, think about something and say, hey, what are my options? How do I accomplish what I need to accomplish? And pick the best option that way. Really just try to eliminate gray area. Eliminating gray area is my number one, what I really believe in. It's really just trying to make things super clear, super simple, super easy for you to make that decision. Because if you have all these variables in your head and you're like, I don't know, should I do this? Should I do that? But when you pull up a piece of paper and you say pros, cons, and you put them in the list and you say, okay, this is a priority, this is not a priority. All of a sudden, right away, you know what your decision is going to be. And you'll never regret it. If you don't make that list, you're going to, be second guessing yourself for the rest of your life, for whatever you're doing. Know what you want, create that list of pros and cons, eliminate the gray area, and execute on that decision and get it done. And one last thing that I would add is that you don't know what you're capable of yourself. You have to really believe that whatever you want to achieve in life, you truly can achieve it. You can. There's no question. There's people that are objectively a lot smarter or a lot more skilled than I am. and
Hmm.
they don't necessarily have the ambition because they don't believe in themselves. You really have to believe in yourself that you're capable, and you are. Every single person has strengths, every single person has weaknesses. So just focus on those strengths. Forget about the weaknesses. Just don't deal with them. If you suck at math, why are you going to be a mathematician? Do something that actually works for you. But
Yeah.
you can achieve whatever you need to achieve in life. And it's a matter of mindset. It's a matter of saying, okay, what's in my way? How do I get there? And that, boils back to, no doubt, it boils back to understanding what's clear and what's not clear, and saying, hey, I can do this. Because what's stopping you? It's all in your head. So you can make your mindset can make you, or your mindset can break you.
You are absolutely right with that. Most people will never in their life find out what their true limits are. So they're never gonna get close. Oh, that is outstanding. Thank you so much for that, Sam. That was I really enjoyed it. Oh,
Thank you. Really appreciate the opportunity. I love talking. I'm sure you realize that at this point.
yeah, so do
And
I. I mean, this is what I do, right? Like it's a whole show about it.
exactly.
Awesome. I'll get the links from you. We'll drop them in the description. And I think if somebody has listened in this far and hasn't already liked the video or subscribed, I feel like they totally should. And go find you on all your different socials and follow.
Listen, I don't hold it against anybody. They don't, but it's all good. Peace and love. And yeah, it's really great being on.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you.